This is Nick with logosbynick.com, and in today's tutorial I'll be demonstrating how you can create channel art for YouTube channels, the little header that goes at the top of the page. And since a lot of you who have asked me about this have gaming channels where you do tech review and gaming and let's play footage and stuff like that, a lot of you guys have asked me to create tutorials like this, so I figured I would make that the theme of this tutorial. It's gaming and tech review, I guess you could call it. So let me minimize this and we'll get started here in Inkscape. By the way, if you'd like to know how you can make Inkscape appear darkened with these custom icons, a link to that information will be in the description of the video. So the first thing I want to do is open up the Align and Distribute menu with this button up here. Click on that. We want Last Selected chosen from that drop down, and then we'll go to the Edit Objects, Colors, Gradients, and Stroke menu to open that up. So let me go back to, let me click on this image over here. This is the template, the sizing, the specifications for what a YouTube channel art should be designed at. Because when you look at a channel, it's going to be viewed on a variety of different devices. So if you notice, the overall size is 2560 by 1440, and that's pixels. That's for viewing on a television. So like when you look at your channel on a TV, you're going to see this entire graphic. You know, like the surfer here and the water and everything, the wave. If you're looking at it with like a large desktop monitor, you're going to see this portion here. And if you're looking at it with like a small desktop or a mobile, it's going to be this area here. This is 1546 by 423. So this is really the main thing to pay attention to when you're designing channel art, because that's what's always going to be seen. If you have important information like logo and text or like a call to action or something like that, it should be kept within this space here. So we're going to set up the Inkscape document to match these specifications right here. So this is 2560 by 1440. So what I'm going to do is, in Inkscape, I'm going to go to File, Document Properties, and let me bring that over here. I'm going to turn off the border shadow. We don't need that. I'm going to turn on Show Border on top of Drawing, and I believe this was, the width was, make sure you have pixels chosen from this drop down. The width, 2560 if I remember correctly, and the height, 1440. Hit Enter. And let me just double check that. 2560, 1440. Okay, good. We'll go back over here. Okay, so that's done. We can close out of that menu. And if you notice, our document is now set up at that size. So if it's too, like if you can't see it, if it's zoomed in too much, just zoom out. You can press minus and plus on the keyboard to zoom in and out like that. So that's a pretty good size right there. And what we want to do now is we want to create a backdrop. So let's come over to the Squares and Rectangles tool, and I'm going to come up here to this icon that says Snap to the Page Border. I'm going to turn that on, and I'm going to come up here and snap the cursor onto the top left corner, and then click and drag and snap the cursor onto this bottom right corner, so it creates a rectangle that is 2560 by 1440. And then we can go back. Actually, before we do that, just make sure this is clicked over here, this make corner sharp. If you don't want rounded corners on this part, so make sure that's deselected like that. And then we'll go back to the Select tool, and I'll go to Path, Object to Path, just to convert that to a path object. And what we want to do now is, let me click off of that to deselect everything. So we have the entire, this is going to be the entire graphic here. We should design something that fits within all of this and looks and flows nicely. But the main information has to be kept within this central area over here for when it's viewed on mobile devices or small laptops or tablets. So let me just go back and get the reference here. This is 1546 by 423. Okay, I'm probably going to have to go back to that. I'm not going to remember that. So what we want to do now is let's open up the Layers menu, View Layers, which is up here. And we're going to click on the plus to create a new layer. And this is going to be called Content Area. And we want this above the current, which go ahead and click Add. And then I'm going to grab the Rectangles tool, and I'm going to create another rectangle. Well, you're not going to be able to see it inside of here, so I'm going to click the X to turn off the fill, so it has no fill color. And then I'll hold Shift and click on the color red to give it a red outline like that. And then I'll come over to the Stroke Style tab over here on the right. I'm going to change that to 2. And then I'll go back to the Select tool. And up here where it says Effect, we want to make sure you have this turned off. When scaling objects, scale the stroke width by the same proportion. Make sure that's turned off. And then we're going to come over to the width and the height, and we're going to change this accordingly. So this was 1546 by 423. So we'll type in 1546 for the width, 1546, and then hit tab on the keyboard to skip over to the height. And I forgot it already. What was it, 423? Yeah, 423 for the height. 423 and hit enter. And then hold shift and click on the rectangle in the background. And let me just come down here to the align to distribute menu. And we want to center that on the vertical and horizontal axis, and then click off it to deselect everything. And then we'll come back up here, up top to the layers menu, and we want to click this lock icon for the content area. Go ahead and click the lock, and then we can close out of that for now. And what this is basically just a reference for us. This is not part of our design. We're going to delete that once we're done with the design. This is just for our reference, so we know that all important information that needs to be kept within that red border. And what creating a layer for it did was, what happened here? Let me go back to the layers menu. Here we go. Okay, so what creating a layer for it did was, it made it so that every time we create something, it goes above the black backdrop, but it stays beneath the red border right there. So that's what we want. That's pretty good. So let's close out of that. Let me close back out of the layers menu. And now we just got to get started on the design part. I'm going to close out of this. I think we're done with this for now. So I'm going to get started on the design here. If you notice, I designed the entire large square as the thumbnail, but I kind of just highlighted the inside area for the thumbnail as well, because that's where the important information is. So to do this, I just went and found a bunch of random images on Pixabay. I'll have links to each one of these images in the description of the video if you'd like to follow along. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the first image. Let me shrink this down. And the first image was this video controller image here. These will be in order in the description, so just go and download those in order. And I'm just going to click and drag that into Inkscape. Click OK to embed it. Maximize this. And by the way, if you're using a Mac, you're not going to be able to click and drag it into a window. You'll have to go to File, Import. So make sure you have the image saved somewhere where you can find it in the directory, and then go to File, Import. So here's our controller image. I'm going to use this here. And I'm just going to hold Shift and click on the black rectangle and center that on the vertical and horizontal axis. Click off of it to deselect everything. And I'm going to click on just the image, and I'm going to hold Control and Shift and scale that down about that much. And I want to make the image so that it kind of just like fades in with like the edges fading into the black background as well. And to do that, I'm going to grab the Squares and Rectangles tool, and I'm going to click and drag to create a rectangle going over the image. Don't worry, yours is probably coming out black now. Don't worry about, I'm going to change this back to black. We want it to be black. And what I'll do now is, let me go back to the select tool. You know what, let's move this out of the way, and let's move this out of the way as well. Let's put this down here. I'll click and drag over both of those and center them up on the vertical and horizontal axis. Click off of it to deselect everything. Now I'm going to click on just this black rectangle right here, and I'm just going to bring the opacity down just a little bit, just so I can see where the borders, where the edge of the image below it is. So once we've done that, I'm going to come up here under the Fill tab and click on the Radial Gradient tool to give that a radial gradient. And I'll press G on the keyboard to get the gradient tool. And I'm going to click on this node over here to the far right and bring the opacity of that all the way up. And then I'll double click on this line right here, this blue line, to create a new stop in there. And then I'm going to click on that stop, and I'm going to make that white. And then I'm going to click on this stop in the middle, and I'm going to make that white as well. And what's going to happen here is everywhere where there's white is going to be where the image shows through, and everywhere where there's black is going to be where it fades out into transparency. And I'll show you what I mean here in just a second. So let me zoom in by pressing plus on the keyboard. I'm just going to hold Control and Shift and grab this node and click and drag and scale this in, because we want the white area, we want all of the white area going inside of the border of the image beneath it. Let me bring that in a little bit. Put that right there like that, and I'd say that's pretty good. We go back to the Select tool. Now we can click and drag over both of those and go to Object, mask, set. And if you notice, like I said, it took the white area and kept it full color, and then it kind of just fades out into transparency. And it doesn't look that good right here. Let me zoom out a little bit. Again, pressing plus and minus on the keyboard to zoom in and out, or you can just hold Control and roll up and down on the mouse wheel, like I like to do. And I'm just going to put this over here in the center, and I'm just going to bring the opacity of this down a little bit. And if you notice, it kind of just fades into the background there. And click off of that to deselect. It kind of just fades in there, and it's going to look even better when we add some more images in. So I'll leave that right about there. You know what? I'll push this off to the left a little bit, and then I'll shrink down the Inkscape window again. And for this image, this one I use I guess it's Minecraft. Click and drag that into Inkscape. Click OK to embed it. Maximize this. And I'm just going to take this image, and I'm just going to bring this and snap it into the lower right corner over there. And I'm going to lower that one step so it goes beneath the controller. And again, we're going to grab the Squares and Rectangles tool and create a rectangle that's just a little bit bigger than that image like that. Let me bring the opacity of that up a little bit. And I'm going to give this a radial gradient again. And if we go to the drop down over here, we should have our gradient that we already created before. That's good, and I'm going to take this center node and I'm going to click and drag it until it snaps onto the page border right there. And then I'm going to hold Control and take this top node and bring it up to right about there. And I'll take this node over here. I'm just pressing down the mouse wheel and moving the mouse to pan the page around. And I'll just hold Control and I'll take this node over here and I'll pull that to the right until that white area goes all the way out to the edge. Maybe I'll take the center node and bring that out a little more. Oh, that's pretty good. Then we go back to the Select tool. And then I'm going to hold Shift and Alt and click on this image. So we have both the Minecraft image and the rectangle selected. And go to Object, Mask, Set. And I'm going to bring the opacity of that down a little bit just so it fades kind of nicely into the background there. It looks pretty good. Everything's starting to come together now. Excuse me. Alright, so we'll click off of that to deselect. The next thing I have here is I have like a hand playing with an Xbox controller, so let me minimize that. Let me minimize the Inkscape window again. Here's the Xbox controller. Click and drag that into Inkscape. Click OK. And again, you could do this with any variety of images you want. You don't have to be following these exact images alone. The point of this tutorial is just to teach you the sizing guidelines and how to use the masking feature to make these images kind of just like blend in like that. So I'll take this one, and I'm actually going to flip this vertically. Actually, no, horizontally. Like that. And let me bring the opacity of that down a little bit, just so we could see it. Just so we could see the image beneath it. And this is about where I want it, right here. That's a pretty good position. And I'll just hold Shift and click on the black image and make sure the bottom edges are aligned. Click off of that to deselect. I'll click on just this image, bring the opacity up, click on the black background, right click that and go to Duplicate. Hold Shift, click on that image and go to Object, Clip, Set. Because that's what we're going to use. We want to confine to this area. And we'll just go ahead and hit Group. Group that together so that we can apply masks to it now. And again, we're gonna create another rectangle going over it. Slightly bigger. Bring the opacity down a little bit. And then go to Radial Gradient. Go to the drop down. Choose our gradient that we used earlier. Take this center stop and put it on the page border right there. I'm just going to hold Control and bring this out to about there. And I'll hold Control and bring that up to about there. And again, we don't want it. We don't want the white stop going all the way. Actually, we don't want the last stop going all the way to the edge because you're gonna see some of the page border, the image border showing through, which we don't want. So make sure to leave a little bit of padding in there. And I'm going to zoom out, and that's pretty good. I'll go to the Select tool, hold Shift and Alt, and click on the image so we have them both selected, and go to Object, Mask, Set. And I'm going to lower that one step so it goes beneath the PlayStation controller. And I'll bring the opacity of that down as well. That's pretty good right there. And then the last image that I used here, I think it's the last image, is kind of just like a space, like a galaxy or like a universe type of image, just to fill in the empty space up there. So again, I'll minimize Inkscape. And I'm going to take this, what is this, Horsehead Nebula. I'm going to take that and click and drag that into Inkscape. Click OK. And this should already be the width. This is 2560. So we can just take this and snap that into the page border. I'm going to bring the opacity of that down a little bit. And I'm just going to hold Control and just click and drag this up to about here. I'm going to bring the opacity down more just so I can see what's beneath it. I want to position this. I like the pink color coming through as part of the design, so I want to make sure that's part of the area there. And you could just lock it to the vertical axis by holding Control while you scroll it up and down. I'll leave that right there. That's pretty good. And now I want to grab the black background beneath it, so I'll hold Alt and click on it, and it should select the black background. And I'll duplicate that by hitting Control D. And I'll hold Shift and click on the universe image, bring the opacity all the way up. Go to Object, Clip, Set, and group that together. I'm going to send that to the bottom, lower selection to the bottom, and then lower it one step so it goes above the background. And I'll bring the opacity of that down a little bit as well. And this is coming together pretty nicely. So let me click off of that to deselect everything. And what's next is I'm just going to put the logo and the little makeshift logo and the information here in the center. So I'm just going to create a rectangle. Let's go to the rectangles tool. Snap to the page border up here and just click and drag and create a rectangle like that. Snap to the bottom border like that. I'll just make that black. Bring the opacity up, and I'll give this a linear gradient. And I'll click on this stop, bring the opacity all the way up, and I'll double click the line right here to create a new stop. Let me zoom in. Double click that line to create a new stop. Actually, no, I need to press G on the keyboard to go to the gradient tool. Now we can do that. Double click that line to create a new stop, and I'm going to take this stop on the far left, bring the opacity all the way down, and take this stop on the far right, bring the opacity all the way down, put this stop down here at the bottom, and let me zoom out. Take this stop, hold Control, and just move it straight up until it snaps onto the edge of the page there. And I'll take this stop over here and just bring that up to the edge of the red. And the same thing, I'll bring this down to the edge of the red. And go to the Select tool, bring the opacity of that down a little bit. And this just gives us a little bit of a buffer between that and the actual design so that we could actually see the text and the wording that we put there. So I'm just going to grab the text tool and create like a quick little makeshift logo. I just wrote game stuff, just like I did in the thumbnail. I'll go to the text editor. I'll find the font I use, which is Yukari Mobile. This is a free font if you'd like to search it and download it. It shouldn't be too hard to find. Close out of that. Let me zoom in a little bit. Oops. Game stuff and right there I wrote gaming and tech review, so I'll just gaming and tech review. Go back to the select tool and just hold Control and Shift to scale that down. Put this over here. Hold Control to scale to keep the proportions like that. And then I wrote like new videos every Tuesday and Friday or whatever it is. So let me just do that as well. I'm just hitting Control D to duplicate that. If you want to duplicate that, you go to the Select tool, hit Control D to duplicate it, and there it is. And we'll go back to the text tool, and I'll just write new videos every Tuesday and Friday. I'll make that italics. Go back to the select tool, hold Control and Shift to scale that down. Maybe make that not that small, that's pretty good. I'm going to click and drag over those two right there and group them together. I'll click and drag over both of these, make sure it's centered on the vertical axis. Click off it to deselect, and I'm just going to create like a little line break there. So we'll grab the rectangle tool, create a little line break. That's good. Bring the opacity up. Select tool. Center them on the vertical axis, and I'm going to come down here to the distribute panel, make vertical gaps between objects equal. That's good. We can group that together. Let me zoom out by pressing minus on the keyboard. I'll put this over here, and I'm just going to make that white. And I'll hold Shift and click on the black stripe. Make sure it's centered on the vertical and horizontal axis. And actually, with them both selected, I'm going to hold Shift and click on our little universe image there. To make sure it's all centered on the vertical axis, because I don't think we did that earlier. We can click off of that to deselect everything. We take this, I'm going to hold Control and Shift and scale that up about that much. And I think that almost does it. There's just a couple of things I'd like to cover here. Let me go back to the text tool. I'm just going to highlight that text and make that red like I did in the thumbnail. Go back to the select tool. Okay, so we have the design done, and there's a couple of things to keep in mind when you're designing channel art for YouTube. For one, it's a good idea to keep any important information away from the left side, because with YouTube they put the profile picture like up here in the top left corner going over the header. It used to be down here at the bottom, but they recently changed it to up here, so I would keep important information all the way, just completely away from this left side over here. And over here on the right side, this is where like your site links and your channel, not your channel, your YouTube social media handles will go. And you know, that's another thing. A lot of times people like to include like their web address and their social media handles on the design. Personally, I don't think it's necessary. It's kind of redundant because YouTube lets you put like your actual links that you can click on to your social media profiles and your websites there. So I like to just exclude it altogether, unless I have some kind of like important call to action that I really want people to take when they see my channel. Otherwise, just like a logo and a little tagline like that works pretty good. And what we could do now is, since the design is completed, we can go to the layers, go back to the view layers menu. We can click on the content area layer, unlock that, and just press delete. Delete the current layer to get rid of that outline. And what we could do now is we can export this. We can go to File, Export Bitmap, or if you're using a later version of Inkscape, it should say like Export as PNG or Export something. Whatever it is, just click on the one that says Export. And the export area, we want to make that the page. And it should show the width 2560 by 1440. The DPI should be set to 90. And the file name, you can just click Browse and you give it a file name and save it in whatever folder you'd like. And once you've done that, you can click Export, and you will have your YouTube channel art that should be able to work across multiple devices. So that's how you can do that with Inkscape. So if you have any questions, let me know. And as always, thank you for watching.